San Francisco. Dub Nation. Time for the real and inside story on Warriors basketball.
Curry sidestep, Curry drive, Curry flip, Curry good!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
We want to keep this show as interactive as possible. It's instant reaction. It's hearing from the fans. It's going inside the locker room.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8, streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Play out of the corner. Oh, what a dunk! The spike from Kuminga has the bench going nuts. Draymond's going to get a tee after Wiggins got the foul. So we got a field goal, the free throw, and a technical free throw. Draymond's got to be careful here. Say his piece. He got another tag. AJ's gone. He just got ejected. With 8:24 remaining in the first. Step for three. Got it! Of course. Put him to sleep. The closer, the layup, the three, the 8-point lead, the magic timeout. Moses Moody is fouled, shooting a three, and an opportunity for a 4-point play. Wiggins in, out, up, and reverse. Prettiest layup of the year for him. Looking like MJ. That was sweet.
All right, some of the highlights of the week, NBC Sports Bay Area. The credit on the calls there, Fitz and Kalena, as it's been another busy week for the Golden State Warriors as they win the last three of this 5-game trip. Still one more to go tomorrow after dropping the opener in Minnesota. Draymond Green ejected in Orlando, and the Warriors finding themselves asking a familiar question. Would they move off of Draymond Green this summer? Of course, Steve Kerr saying that what Draymond did was unforgivable. Stephen Curry, emotional. But the Warriors finding ways, as they have done all season long, to win on the road, now to the tune of 21-15. We welcome you in. It's Just Dubs with JD, John Dickinson, here on KNBR, the sports leader, as we are with you each and every Saturday morning. Been some Giants conflicts as they get their season off and rolling with spring training. But whenever we can, this show is going to be on the radio, and it is not only today, which we're really thrilled about, but also next Saturday from 10 a.m. until noon. But we're every week, YouTube, Twitch, and the KNBR Twitter stream as well. And, accompanying our post-game Dubs coverage with the Dubs OT show, which you can see and or hear on KNBR at the Final Horn immediately following each and every Warriors game. Greg Silver, producer and co-host of this show and all of our Dubs content here on KNBR, the sports leader, joins me as always. Greg, how are you this morning? Good to be with you, my friend. It's nice to see a few of our regulars, CA, Daniel Shabazz, Frank Kim, chiming in here on the YouTube chat as things kind of build up and people start to comment. But, never a dull moment for the Warriors, good or bad. And this week, no exception.
Hasn't it kind of been that way all season long? I mean, really, we started this Dubs coverage in November, in the middle of the season, and we've hit the ground running, and it's just been never, ever, ever a dull day. We've had some frustrating ones. We've had some incredible ones, but this Warriors team always has something to offer, and Draymond Green, big part of that. He was a big headliner this week, and of course, Stephen Curry, another big headliner, making big plays as well. Warriors on a nice little win streak, but, they seem to have a habit of finding a way to win 4 or 5 and then lose 4 or 5. So it's always been swinging back and forth. I think if you look at any of the 4 Western play-in teams, there's a reason with inconsistency why they're in the 7-10 range.
Yeah, and you look at the Warriors, they've needed every one of these wins to help keep their hold on the Houston Rockets, who still are only a game back of the Warriors for the final play-in spot, with the Warriors currently sitting in 10th, even off of the win last night in Charlotte. Prior to that, Orlando and then Miami on Tuesday. Last night, 115-97 is the final. As the Warriors, again, got that 21st road win. And what does it all mean? Well, it means the Warriors are hanging on as far as the NBA standings go, but playing better basketball as they have all year long on the road. Rockets won their 11th in a row in Utah last night as the Jazz suddenly have dropped 8 consecutive games. The Lakers have been playing well. All of a sudden, Dallas seems to have a hold on the 6th seed with the Pelicans 5 and 6, and those two teams potentially jockeying. I looked up at the standings this morning, and it really seems like, and obviously the Rockets have a say in this, and the Warriors are going to have to play well here down the stretch to fend them off now with 9 games to go. But the most likely outcome as it stands here today with 15 days to go before the regular season ends is that the play-in tournament is going to feature Phoenix. Think about that. Sacramento, Warriors obviously know the Kings pretty well, the Lakers, and then Golden State. I mean, what a 4, what a group of 4 to be in that mix potentially, and the Warriors obviously may, and in all likelihood, if they can hold off Houston, are going to have to win a couple of road games against 2 of those 3 teams just to get the 8 seed. The number 1 seed continues to shift all around with Minnesota and Oklahoma City now tied atop. Timberwolves went in and beat the Jamal Murray-less Denver Nuggets last night in Denver. And so Minnesota and OKC are tied atop the West, with Denver slipping, at least for the moment, down to 3, but only a half game back. So it's going to be a wild finish here with the Warriors off to San Antonio before coming home and then going right back out on the road to play Houston and Dallas again, with the one-off home game against the Mavs coming up on Tuesday. So as mentioned in the open, we do like to keep the show as interactive as possible. 808 KNBR is the number to join the conversation, to give us a call or shoot us a text here, 415-808-5627.
Call Greg. That's a better idea.
Yes, call Greg, and Greg will get you on the air, and we can talk some Dubs basketball between now and noon, and then it's talking baseball with Marty Lurie. The Giants coverage will get rolling at noon with the Giants and Padres scheduled to play down in San Diego. A first pitch of 4:15 for that one here on KNBR, weather permitting. I know the weather everywhere is a bit tumultuous, and so we shall see, especially down in Southern California and in San Diego. So I know there is some concern about that game, but we'll keep you updated if there is anything that breaks on that front as far as the Giants game, which is scheduled for a 4:15 first pitch down in San Diego. So, yeah, Warriors, I think, do get some credit, even though it's been the theme of their entire season, has been, just when it looks like maybe things are falling apart, they go on the road and they play much better basketball, and then they lead everybody to think that this team can get on a run, and then they come home with a chance to really push forward, and then they lose a bunch of home games. I mean, that's really what they've done all season long, and most recently is no different. And this, but the 3-1 trip with all the road games, they've just been so much more focused on the road, even in dealing with drama. They've been, I feel like, more focused on the road with Draymond getting ejected in Orlando, and not having Jonathan Kuminga these last couple of games in Orlando and Charlotte. Andrew Wiggins has been somebody who's stepped up big, kind of making a last stand potentially to stay with the Warriors. Hey, keep me. I want to stay. Don't try to trade me for somebody else's problem in the offseason, and try to move forward in that direction. And then Steph just trying to hold it all together. Didn't have Klay Thompson last night as well, dealing with a little bit of knee tendonitis late. He came up as a scratch right before tip-off. And, level of opponent and type of opponent, I think, is surely important. The Warriors have had some games, I think, against some lesser opponents and some banged-up opponents on the road. But regardless, they've had a lot of those games at home and haven't played nearly as well as they have on the road over the course of this season. So busy week, a lot to talk about. Warriors improving now to 19-7 since January 30th in 26 games where Stephen Curry has started and finished. Basically, that takes out the 1-3 stretch where he got injured against Chicago. The Warriors lost that game late and then went 1-2 in games against San Antonio twice and Dallas before he returned. Now with the 3-game winning streak, 5-3 since Steph has come back, and it all adds up to a 19-7 26-game stretch, and 13-3 on the road over that same span when they've had Stephen Curry. So I guess you could make the case the Warriors aren't going to fear having to play a couple of road play-in tournament games and aren't going to fear having to play Houston on the road here, coming up with the Rockets as hot as anybody in the NBA and chasing the Warriors in a big-time way. So 808 KNBR is the number. That just sets the table as it is. Just Dubs here with John Dickinson. Greg Silver on hand as well. Appreciate everybody on YouTube and Twitch and the Twitter X stream. We'll go ahead and pause here. We'll come back and we will continue the conversation as you're listening to KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
JD on a Saturday just feels right.
Live from downtown.
Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Yeah, too bad. It was unfortunate. He deserved it. He'll bounce back. I'm just proud of the guys for stepping up. Moses came off the bench, had a big game for us. Guy made a big three. Gary was fantastic. So we had guys step up, and that's what it takes.
All right, Steve Kerr on the Warriors win in Orlando on Draymond Green being ejected. Yeah, deserved it. Leading to a lot of silly national and I think even local questions over the course of the last few days. Is Stephen Curry finally done with Draymond Green? Now, would the Warriors move off of Draymond Green this summer? I mean, that's one that really wasn't on my bingo card, at least as of a couple of days ago. And I know Greg Silver here. It is Just Dubs, John Dickinson, Greg Silver here on KNBR, the Sports Leader, with you until noon. 808 KNBR if you want to join the conversation on the phone lines as well. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch. But yeah, I know we've spent the better part of our YouTube podcasted shows the last couple of weeks, Greg, just discussing all of the different off-season conversations that the Warriors are going to have from, Stephen Curry and the direction that he would be willing to have the organization go as far as, hey, Steph, are you comfortable with more of the development around young players and maybe not contending for a championship? The Wiggins availability / do the Warriors have to have somebody that they can count on to be present, whether that's on the floor or just in the building on a regular basis? To the Klay Thompson, are you willing to take less money and come off the bench? Are you truly willing to do that? All of those conversations that are going to have to be had here, among others. The are you done with Draymond conversation, I think, is still a little bit silly, but it just goes to show every single time there's an incident. And I do think maybe some people, Greg, had sort of gotten it in their mind that Draymond was just never going to have another incident ever again. And I know officiating was a big part of what Draymond wanted to try to rectify in coming back from the December and January suspension. For the most part, he has been able to do that. Slip up in Orlando, the Warriors won the game, which I do think matters in this whole thing. I mean, if the Warriors end up losing that game, I think that the conversation is as crazy as it sounds is a whole lot different, because the belief would be that he really cost the Warriors again. I think the guys that Steve mentioned in the clip that we played, basically saving that game, really saved, I think, a bigger picture potential disaster and weight that could have been hanging over this team over the last few days. It's easy to move on when you win the game anyway. And it's, easier to say some of the things that have been said. And I even put it out there on our Dubs OT show on Wednesday. I mean, did you think Draymond was never going to get ejected from a game again? Did you think he was never going to mix it up with an official ever again? So, all in all, I think it wasn't maybe as big a deal, Greg, as it was made, but that's the Draymond effect. He is always, even if it wasn't this incident, he is always one incident away from, I think, basically the end of his Warriors tenure. When you look at just how volatile a personality that he is.
Not just his Warriors tenure, but his NBA tenure. I mean, Steve Kerr said he thought his career was really on the line before that Minnesota game, after the Nurkic incident and the indefinite suspension and the Gobert incident and choking the chokehold. So, yeah, I mean, the thing with the Draymond Green, and we've said it in a few different ways, I think this particular ejection was the least severe out of all of them this season, but you stack it on top of everything, and Draymond's a national headline. Like, just to peel back the curtain a little bit for everybody, a lot of times at the end of our late night Dubs OT shows, we'll go into national CBS Sports Radio. So we'll be kind of the last Bay Area programming of the night, and we'll go into CBS. And you can tell the Draymond stuff is a big deal all around because they'll be talking about this on national shows. Like that was the headliner. Draymond Green gets ejected after 3.5 minutes of play. All throughout the suspension, lots and lots and lots of Draymond talk. So it is not just something that, we think it's a big deal because we're here in this market and we watch all the local games. No, Draymond is posted about all the time. He's talked about all the time. He does have the microscope under him. I get it. And I don't think I make too much of the Stephen Curry reaction to the ejection in the sense of he's tired of his BS and he's done with Draymond and they need to move off of him after the season. But you can sense some serious fatigue, and it just illuminates everything that Steph has had to do to carry this team that is just trying to not even contend, just be competitive in a really good Western Conference. And he's doing this at the age of 36. So, like, to me, the Draymond ejection really highlights what Steph has had to deal with at times to carry such a load, where it's really in a large percentage of it on him when it kind of should be a large percent of this falls on the veteran core of Steph, Clay, Dre.
Yeah, and look, Steph said it again, and we have the cut, so we might as well play it. I mean, he was asked about his reaction and the Draymond ejection, and I think because you hit it, I think the nail on the head as far as Steph's reaction to Draymond being ejected, and the head in the jersey and needing to be consoled by Steve Kerr in a game and having it come in the middle of a game that the Warriors, not even in the middle of a trip, but at the beginning of a game that the Warriors really need to get because they need to get every game. I think the Curry reaction, Greg, is what maybe changed the conversation a little bit, just because Steph has been hell or high water. He has been the, one of the voices that has, kept Draymond on the team maybe longer than in other situations another organization would have. He's been a voice in Draymond's corner, basically, and not supporting the actions, but as he says here, supporting the simple fact that he's still pretty important to what the Warriors do. So we can go ahead and roll that.
Yeah, well, just to jump in real quick before we get to some of the sounds that we had planned to play, is I think that's a really good point, JD, and it brings up an argument that I stood pretty firm on last offseason when the Jordan Poole trade was officially made to go to Washington and bring in Chris Paul. And a lot of the reaction instantly was, wow, they sided with Draymond over Jordan Poole. And to me, I was really like, they sided with Steph. Like, they sided with the most important and best and most accomplished and most beloved player in the history of the franchise, as they should. And Steph was always going to pick Draymond as his preferred teammate. So that's kind of how I saw it, with Steph being a big voice in his corner and wanting to play with him, because those two do accomplish so much on the court together. But the big asterisk in all of this is on the court, right? Like, when Draymond Green has done so much damage or sabotage that he's off the court too much, we've seen how problematic this team can be and how difficult it is for Steph, as great as he is, to carry what would probably be a 20-win team without him to try to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I don't even think the last year conversation about Jordan Poole and Draymond, the part of that was Jordan Poole's play. And I think, we can't just dismiss the fact that it was, this wasn't 2022 Jordan Poole that the Warriors were trying to evaluate in conjunction with what do they do with Draymond Green. This was a Jordan Poole whose game had slipped. It was a Jordan Poole whose attitude had slipped. His focus had slipped. It's a guy that they had just paid a ton of money to, a boatload of money to, that they were going to have to continue to play or pay a boatload of money to moving forward, beginning with this season. And I think they also determined that generally speaking, off of last year, and I think it's funny because it's going to be a different conversation this year, but generally speaking off of last year, Greg, it was, we need to get more veteran. And, the young players weren't capable of helping at the level that and or developing. I think there was some development last year. Obviously, I do think Moody and Kuminga developed last year and are farther along this year because of last year, but not to the level that the fans wanted it or believed that it should have been. But there was so I think it wasn't just Draymond versus Poole. It was, Poole, the player, and the need to want to get a little bit more veteran. Now you can debate, and we can, if you want, 808 KNBR, was that a mistake? I don't think it was a mistake when you look at the season that Jordan Poole's had with Washington and the money that the Warriors would be on the hook for. I mean, they would be in pretty big trouble financially, unless they were a significantly better team for having Jordan Poole. So, but the reality is, and it goes back to the Steph cut, so we might as well play it. Draymond still is important to whatever the ultimate goals here for the Warriors.
No, I say we need him. He knows that. We all know that. So whatever it takes to keep him on the floor, and be available, that's what's got to happen, especially at this point in the year. So it's a tough way to start the game, but I am extremely proud of every single person that stepped foot on the floor tonight and responded the way that they did, because back to back, a team as physical as they are, we got contributions from everybody, and it was a beautiful team effort to respond the way that we did and get this win.
We need him. Simple as that. I mean, that is the tell right there. And sure, yeah, you give everybody credit for getting a win, which, that I think was one of the more important wins of the season, just based on the fact that it didn't further cloud Draymond screwing up and getting himself kicked out in the first 4 minutes of the game. So yeah, all credit to everybody else. But Steph said this in December and in January and has said it repeatedly, and it still rings true, regardless of what you think of the Warriors' young players and the ceiling that they may have and the future that they may ultimately play with. As long as Steph Curry's here, and as long as Draymond Green is still playing at the level that he's playing when he's available, the Warriors are better for having Draymond Green on this team. And everybody knows it. And so you still have to do that equation, which is how do you, is he still bringing enough good things to the table to outweigh the bad things that are brought to the table? And I think, that's a scenario where you look at it, and I think the good does still outweigh the bad. Now, I get it, and a lot of people are texting in, and people in the comments, it's like, look, this is just another, Draymond's never going to, and yeah, Draymond's never going to change. Like, that's a reality that I think we knew back in 2016, to be perfectly honest, that Draymond wasn't in all likelihood going to change. But I still think again, overall, the good outweighs the bad. But the one thing that Draymond has done is he's put himself in this position now where he is one major incident, and getting kicked out of a game is not necessarily a major incident. It could be, depends on how you get kicked out, but how he got kicked out on Wednesday, I don't think was a major enough incident to sort of further the Now it's over the top. And look, Steph ultimately holds the keys there. If Steph reaches a breaking point, then, that is a legitimate thing. But something that would be addressed in the offseason among those many difficult conversations, because I think the Draymond conversation is not even a organization to Draymond conversation. It's not even the Warriors are going to continue to have these conversations as far as, hey, keep your cool. This is what you have to do. We're here for you. Chill out. I think that was part of, and I talked about this on Dubs OT last night. I think part of just keeping Draymond calm was even challenging that play last night when he mixes it up with Grant Williams, even though you knew that it wasn't going to get overturned. It was give Draymond a breather, show him that you have his back just to calm him down, even if he's wrong. Like that's still, I think, a part of this equation as far as it relates to Draymond. But the Draymond offseason discussion, is not even organization to Draymond. It's more organization about Draymond. And the reality is, and it goes back to what Mike Dunleavy has said, it goes back to what Joe Lacob has said, it goes back to what Steve Kerr has said, and Stephen Curry is the other part of that. Like, those are the people that ultimately are going to get in a room and talk about Draymond, and if they have to ask themselves the tough question, is it still worth it? If those answers change, and when those answers change collectively or from a majority of the four in that room that are going to be having that conversation, then I think that's where you get down a path of, okay, do you look to move on? But I still think he's too big a part of the Warriors defense, number one, and he's too big a part of the two-man game and the ability to get Steph on offense, the shots in the flow that Stephen Curry is used to getting. I think Steph wants to play with Draymond, Greg, just as much as he wants Steve Kerr to be coaching him, over these next couple of years. And I still, barring another event like Gobert or Nurkic, that level, or Jordan Poole, or even Kevin Durant, level type incident, I think the Warriors are committed to Draymond here for at least these next 2 years.
Yeah, 100%, especially on the Steph wanting to play with Draymond just as much as he wants Kerr to be around and keeping this core together, ideally. I think he really wants Klay Thompson to stay in the offseason if they could come to good terms with Joe Lacob and maybe him taking a contract that allows the Warriors to fulfill Lacob's goal of getting under that second apron, but also Klay Thompson getting to stay in a Warriors uniform, which that's a whole different discussion. JD, I want to get to one comment I saw because it's always good to interact with our viewers here on the Sports Leader. A couple good texts on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line as well. But not to get too off topic here, but Joe Schmo, welcome Joe, was saying that Draymond was also responsible for pushing out Kevin Durant too. I know you just mentioned the KD incident. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, given that I like it. Like, Kevin Durant did go on record and say that was not helpful, and it was probably part of his decision to leave. But KD was also getting bullied for 3 years, saying anything he accomplished in that uniform didn't count, to the point where he probably was going to want to leave and do his own thing anyway. That said, do you think that looking back, and then you account for Jordan Poole or some of this stuff now, is Draymond Green just not care about some of his teammates in the way that he does the ones he came up with?
Well, I think as far as I don't know that it's that. I look, Draymond didn't help Durant want to stay. I mean, I think Durant was already leaning toward looking to leave, but that incident in November of Durant's last season in 2018, wow, over 5 years ago now, but that didn't help. But I think the bigger picture, grand scheme of things, as far as all of that, I think Durant, and I've said this a bunch, so people who've listened to me for a long time will know where I'm going to go with this, but we haven't really discussed this. I think part of why Durant came to the Warriors was because he saw their culture. He saw the way that, how selfless Steph was as a superstar, how everybody got along and fought for each other and strengthened numbers, even with superstar players. And I think he came in part because of that. Like, whatever the people say about me, but damned, even though I'm joining the team that they knocked out and sent me home just, a month or whatever it was earlier from the moment which he made the decision. But I think in part Durant came because, yeah, he wanted to win a title, but he also was impressed enough with the Warriors organizationally and their culture to join. I think what happened when Durant got to the Warriors was that culture eroded as the time went on. And, they've been able to build it back in different ways, with the 2022 championship run and all of that. But my take on Durant, to put it bluntly, was I think he got here kind of falling in love with the Warriors culture. And then over the 3 years, I think he came to think that the Warriors culture was fraudulent. And like basically, some of the comments he made about, Steve Kerr and, some of the, the Draymond stuff, I think like it was, remember the sarcastic playing with joy, comments from Durant, which obviously has been a Kerr staple. So I think Durant got here and was like, you know what, all this stuff is it's a little bit fake. And I think that kind of just, he didn't like that on top of all the crap he took for coming, even though it got him a couple of championships, and vaulted him for a time into the conversation of, is this guy the best player in the game, period. Which I always found to be interesting, not to get off on a tangent, although we are kind of getting off on a tangent now. I always thought it was interesting because Durant's time with the Warriors vaulted Durant into, is he better than LeBron? As the basically the number one player in the game at that point in time, in the world at that point in time. I always found that interesting because nationally, and I covered all of those playoff series on the road and everything, and nationally, when you would talk to people, it was always Durant. Durant's the alpha, Durant's the one, Curry's the two. Don't say that in the Bay. And so it was like all like it was this like two different worlds of, in the Bay, it was no, Durant's riding with Curry. Nationally, it was always Durant. Like, I'll never forget, like, Durant was the dude for those years, for the most part, he was the dude on the marquee. He was the dude on the finals billboards. He was the dude with LeBron. And I guess rightfully so at that point. But I mean, you look at the way things have turned out for Durant since, and then Steph going on to win another championship and all of that. And look, Durant had been in the league at that point longer than Steph and had accomplished, I think, championships aside, had accomplished as much or more for longer. But it's funny to think back now and Steph winning another title without Durant and the level that he's played at now till 36. I mean, there's no doubt. Like Steph is above Durant, I feel like, in terms of like when we go all time like rankings, like all time player rankings. Like I'm putting Steph ahead of Durant when it's all said and done.
I mean, also with Steph, and I won't go too long on this because we'd just be preaching to the choir of our local audience. But I also think that there are certain players, very few.
And I'll
players,
say this real quick.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said that 5 years ago. I wouldn't have put Durant ahead of, like, I would have put 6 years ago, I would have put Durant ahead of Steph in the, like, just all, just player rankings, right? Like just of their careers to that point. It just goes to tell you got to let a career play. Cause I think I would put Steph ahead of Durant now and without a doubt.
Well, how many players are in the Steph category of elevating their teammates to that degree? I mean, a serious question, JD. Who on the Warriors has played for the Warriors, left the Warriors, and still had a pretty serviceable NBA career? Like JaVale McGee's been a decent role player for other teams, but GP2 didn't even really play in Portland. Like seriously, is there anyone I'm missing?
Chris Boucher. No, I'm kidding. He never actually played for the Warriors.
I mean, besides KD, obviously.
Yeah, KD's the obvious one. No, it's interesting. I mean, I always thought, and I don't mean to go cynical here on you, but I mean, Iguodala kind of tapped out after he left the Warriors, but his obviously best days overall were pre-Warriors, but then obviously he really helped the Warriors in his role. But yeah, I think a lot of that, though, I think is circumstantial, though, to the point of, and here's the not to get cynical part. I think a lot of those guys that were beloved here in the Bay at the strength and numbers guys, and a lot of them, they weren't that good. Like the truth is they were nice little role players, but they were never going to be like Ian Clark was never going to go be a standalone, player somewhere else. JTA was never going to go be a standalone player somewhere else. Otto Porter was on the downturn physically, and the Warriors found something for a year. But I think, even he was like toward the end of his career, even though the Warriors got him paid one more time.
No, and I don't disagree with any of that. But the point is,
Barbosa,
Steph Curry has always gotten the most out of guys.
Totally. No, totally. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think, Mo Spates is another, I like all of these. No, you're right. You can go through all of these guys. And again, no disrespect to them because they were all productive players and good players. But I think a lot of them, the Warriors just, Harrison Barnes Harrison Barnes has basically gone on to have the exact same career I feel like he had with the Warriors. And, maybe a little bit better. I think he would be maybe the other one. Because he was never a star player with the Warriors and he hasn't been a star player since, but he's been the steady player that he was with the Warriors, I think, in Dallas and in Sacramento over the time since Harrison has been gone. So but again, he was one of the few players that was actually still young prime when he left. I feel like almost everybody else, and again, maybe I'm missing somebody, but everybody else was pretty clear cut on the downturn as far as their careers go. But again, tangent. We get off on a little bit of a tangent as far as, and I can't even remember, how did we even get into this conversation, Greg? I don't even remember how did we get down the Durant path?
It was Joe Schmo's comments saying Draymond pushed KD out. Yeah.
Okay. So it was 6 degrees of Draymond. That's right. It was Draymond. And that's not, again, the short answer before we did a 10-minute tangent on it, the short answer is it didn't help. It definitely didn't help. Some other comments about Draymond, Joe Schmo chiming in a couple of different times. Draymond just not a team player. Again, I have a hard time. Draymond, here's the thing. Draymond has a temper. That's what it is. Draymond has a temper that he cannot control sometimes, and an inability to let it go. Joe Schmo, Draymond should have been suspended the rest of the season. Also adding, not that we didn't expect him to get ejected. Just this season after a suspension, he was supposed to be on a short leash. Next ejection, you're done. I don't think it was ever next ejection, you're done.
It's what you said, JD. It's what? How does he get kicked out of a game?
Well, and again, it's his suspension didn't do anything. He didn't learn. I see. And again, maybe I'm in the minority on this, Greg, but I think Draymond has been on good behavior in the time that he's been back. Now, that's relative, and you may say, JD, you're crazy. That's unacceptable. Like, everybody has their own definition of what's acceptable and what's not, especially when it comes to antics and mixing it up with other players and mixing it up with the officials. But I don't feel like again, maybe I'm crazy, but in the 2.5 months that Draymond Green's been back from suspension, I do think Draymond Green has been on good behavior for Draymond Green. No? I mean, I don't know. There have been a bunch of times in the past where I think he would have gone off the rails.
Oh, yeah. I think 100%. And it's funny because, as I said, with the ejection, when I was on with Copes and Marcus Thompson for a little crossover there on Wednesday, I was like, the bar's on the floor for Draymond ejections. Like, oh, he didn't choke anybody out. That's a big win, whatever. But, yeah, I don't think he's completely not learned to say anything. Like, yeah, it's exactly. I thought the Nurkic game, the Suns game right before the Super Bowl, as everyone said, he kind of rode that line perfectly of being Draymond, being emotional. I mean, he is the reason that the Chase crowd went from, oh, cool, this is a good Saturday night game, to playoff-like atmosphere because of how fired up he was. I thought that this is going to be weird to say too, and maybe I'll be in the minority here. I thought the technical foul he got in that game for getting mad at the blatant missed call when he got hit in the head, I thought that was a great tech. Like, that changed the entire game, both in the crowd and on the court, for how the Warriors played with juice. obviously he can't be doing that every night. Like you can't afford a tech a night kind of thing. I do think in the Magic, the game, there was like the question of, do you think he just decided he didn't want to play that night and ran himself off the court? Yeah, not the worst theory in the world. Yeah, maybe.
Now, again, that to me, if that's what he did, that is pretty unacceptable. But unacceptable again. Steve Kerr, what he said, unforgivable. Like I feel like that's over dramatic. Like I really do feel like that's over dramatic. Like, okay, you can say it's unacceptable. Well, but it's not unacceptable to the point where there's consequences or it's going to derail future games beyond what was the one that he already got thrown out for. So I think that's kind of part of where I'm going with. Like, you could say unacceptable and you could say unforgivable and you can say, the Warriors have to move off of them now. But I mean, come on, let's be real. Let's be real. I think unacceptable and unforgivable are overblown. When you look at just Wednesday, it was really bad. And you want, with the rest of a team that's shorthanded, no Kuminga, no Clay last night, but no Kuminga in that game in Orlando. And they're banged up, they're grinding, they're playing every other day. It's a back-to-back. Those are the games where you want your vets and your leaders to be out there. Even if you're going to lose, you want to lose together, right? You want to just ride or die, lose together. And so that, I think, is where, it sucks basically for everybody involved. But unforgivable is you pop off and you do what you did to Nurkic again. Unforgivable is Rudy Gobert again. Unforgivable is Jordan Poole again. Unforgivable would
Sabonis.
be Sabonis, multiple ejections. Those, that to me is when it's put out there, oh, Draymond was on his last strike. Well, his last strike is not picking up 2 techs in a March game. I don't know. And again, people can feel free to disagree with me. I feel like I am in the minority a little bit on this one. 808 KNBR is the number. Here it is, just Dubs with John Dickinson and Greg Silver as we're rolling through here on a Saturday morning until noon. By the way, Greg, I do have a quick little update from the San Diego Padres. From the Padres, for those that are, I know people are fired up about the Giants, and the Giants are.
Is this worthy of the breaking news chime?
I think it actually is. I think it is, because people are planning their days around the Giants because the Bay Area and San Francisco in particular are fired up. Here from the Padres, after meeting with MLB and the National Weather Service, we expect today's game to be played as scheduled, with rain lessening significantly prior to first pitch and as the evening progresses. So there you go.
Huge so day
there
for
you go.
KNBR, baby.
Fret not, Giants fans, if you're planning your day around 4:15 and the Giants and the Padres playing game 3 of their 4-game series down in San Diego with that's Jordan Hicks against Dylan Cease at 4:15. That's be a good one. Jordan Hicks has looked really good in spring training and dominant against the A's in the game earlier this week. At the Coliseum. So, yeah, 808 KNBR, it is just Dubs. Good news on the Giants front for later. Marty Lurie's going to be by at noon with some talking baseball as the Giants coverage will get rolling at noon and get you all the way to 4:15 for the Giants and Padres here on KNBR, the sports leader. Let's get back into do we want to take the call? Want to take Sean?
Yeah, I want to take Sean. We're going to take Sean.
Yeah, Sean in San Rafael. Is here on KNBR, joining us on Just Dubs here on a Saturday. Hey, Sean, how are you?
What's good, JD? How you doing?
I'm doing well, my friend. What's on your mind this morning?
I wanted to talk a little bit about the 3 road wins under Hunter. I thought we've played really well in all 3 of those games, especially defensively without Kuminga. And Clay sat out last night. I know Clay's kind of lost a step on D, but he still makes a difference.
Yeah, I think so. And, yeah, the defense has set the tone. Sean, Greg had the numbers last night, and, they're basically giving up 18 first-quarter points over the last 4 games on this trip, the first 4 games of the trip, and they just have been more focused and more energetic defensively. And they're playing some teams that aren't as great shooting teams, which I think helps as well. But when you put that effort out there initially, Sean, it I think goes a long way toward not letting teams get comfortable for the rest of the game. I think too often, and a lot of the times at home, Sean, the Warriors have let teams get comfortable against them and get hot, even if they aren't great players necessarily, and then they have a tough time slowing them down as the game goes on, and it's why I think they've lost a lot of these home games.
Yeah, I would totally agree on that note. Like the defensive intensity, and you're talking about those teams who aren't great shooters. Like if you put more pressure on them, and they'll that's why Steph's so good, because he won't crumble under pressure. Like that's what part of make the Warriors so good. But
thanks, Sean. Have a great Saturday. Did you have something you wanted to say about Draymond also, or was that it?
Yeah, just Steph shaking his head I just don't think I think one of them has to go. No, I don't think they have to go, but I just don't think they still have great chemistry, but I just don't think Steph's tired of the act.
Thanks, Sean. I think in the moment Steph was extremely frustrated. And we appreciate the call, Sean. Always appreciate Sean chiming in here on Just Dubs on KNBR. Careful, Sean. One of them has to go. I think there's a different way of saying that if you believe it, and that would be Draymond has to go. If you believe that, then because Steph ain't going anywhere at this point. But no, I think it is a role. I think too much was made of Wednesday being the breaking point for Steph. I just think it got caught. It got caught in a moment where Steph was like, "Really, dude? Really? You couldn't let that go? That was nothing." And you pick up a tech. Officials give you all kinds of leeway, and then you couldn't let that freaking go. It was almost just it was just exhausting.
It's just exhausting.
Yes, as Bob Myers said back when Draymond got himself suspended. Ken and San Mateo next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Ken.
Yeah, hey, thanks for taking my call, guys. Hey, I think the organization is to blame, not Draymond. And let me just say why. Because the Warriors asked Draymond to do stuff that no other team does. The guy has to go out and guard guys 5 inches bigger, 50 pounds heavier every freaking night. And nobody else does that across the league. And you just put so much – they asked Draymond to do so much. He has to sacrifice his body. He has to give so much to the organization. I think it's, where's the Andrew Bogut's? Where's the David Wests? Where are the guys that we need to back him up? He has to be the emotional leader all the time. That's such a huge burden for one guy to take on. So I got a lot of empathy for Draymond. That guy is going to go down in the history books as one of the greatest Warriors ever, and that's just what I think.
Thanks, Ken. I don't disagree with the last part. Going to go down as one of the greatest Warriors ever. I don't know a lot of people who would say they have empathy for Draymond Green. That is kind of a new one. But I do think it's a scenario where I think that is part of why Draymond loses it, is because he is constantly towing the line and feels that he has to toe the line, not to help the Warriors, or not to only help the Warriors, but also to just be the best version of himself. I think he feels like he has to toe that line. And when you toe that line, sometimes you're going to cross the line. Again, we all grow up. We all get a little bit older. We all have to find ways to be able to function and succeed under new parameters. And I think that's an adjustment that Draymond has not made as his career has gone on at the level that the Warriors have needed him to. There have been too many what I would call extreme incidents. I don't think Wednesday was an extreme incident. Now, you never know what the breaking point is going to be for an organization, and sometimes a breaking point can be small when there is such trauma, over and over and over and over that he's brought to the table. But again, I just felt like some of the conversation off of Wednesday specifically was a little bit overblown. Greg in the YouTube chat, Draymond cost this franchise a championship in 2016. I stopped watching after that. Enjoy the self-sabotage and Green sabotage of this team. His antics are embarrassing.
Missed 3 rings.
There are a lot of people that feel that way, though. I don't know about stopped watching, but I will say this. 2016 was when this thing went beyond repair. 2016 was when this thing went beyond repair. In fact, that's a good place to pause, and we'll come back and I'll tell you why. 2016, I think, was the point in which the Warriors basically made their bed with Draymond Green for the remainder of his career, at least for them. 808 KNBR is the number to give us a call or shoot us a text. We got 1 hour down. We got 1 hour to come. It's just Dubs with JD, John Dickinson. Greg Silver is here as well. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Champion of change.
Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues, streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
It's time for the Warriors to part ways with Draymond Green. Mike Dunleavy, Joe Lacob, Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, they're going to have that tough conversation in the offseason, because once a person show you who they are, you have to believe them. And like we say about a lot of old people, they're stuck in their ways. Well, Draymond Green is a veteran, and he's stuck in his ways.
Was that this week? Was that like 2 days ago, Greg? Oh, my goodness. Wow. Kendrick Perkins on ESPN. Hour number 2, Just Dubs with John Dickinson. Some of the craziness coming off of the Draymond Green ejection in Orlando. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one, Kendrick, that puts it all over the top to where the Warriors have to have a conversation to move on from Draymond Green. We're talking a lot about that in the first hour of the show. It is Just Dubs with JD, Greg Silver here as well. We're with you until noon, 808 KNBR, to join the conversation as we have talked a lot about Draymond. I've made the point that I think, some of the chatter, and that's why we played the Kendrick Perkins cut, that sounds like something that would have been, in January or December or November, when he mixed it up with Rudy Gobert, not off of the game on Wednesday against Orlando. But I guess the point is that it all adds up. A lot of overblown chatter, though, I think, off of this incident specifically. But the Warriors are going to have to evaluate everything in the offseason. Draymond's still maybe not at the top of that list, but it definitely didn't help him getting thrown out of that game in Orlando. But the Warriors able to win it. They're 3-1 in this road trip. They're hanging on to the 10th spot in the play-in tournament. And, again, as I mentioned before the break, and we'll get to a phone call here at 808 KNBR, I think the Warriors made their bed in 2016. And I'll tell you what I mean by that coming up. But first, let's get Faith at Third in San Francisco next here on the Sports Leader.
How you guys doing today?
Good. Doing well. What's going on?
Okay, so, been watching this team since the inception of Steph and Draymond. Yes, Draymond has a temper. But I fail to see the NBA, Big Perk and all them talking about people like Brooks. Grant Williams kind of baited him the other night. Because that's what Grant Williams does. That's what he does. And when Grant was on Boston, that's what he was doing. He baits people. And I don't see anybody talking about Grant Williams or Dylan Brooks or these type. There's a bunch of, few Draymond Greens in the NBA. He's not the only bad Simon Legree in, the NBA. This is just how he plays. But they need to be fair on who they talk about and how they talk about them and talk about Draymond in the same realm. We need Draymond.
Yeah, no, Faith at Third, thank you. Look, I think Dylan Brooks does get talked about for his antics. I don't think he's got the full-blown resume of incidents. He's got some incidents, but I don't think he has the full-blown resume of incidents that Draymond does. He's a younger player, so we'll see. He may get to that point. As far as Grant Williams, I thought that was that was definitely spot on as far as him trying to bait Draymond into mixing it up. That was somebody who knew Draymond got kicked out of the last game and was going to try to see if he could get him to lose his cool at a point in which the Warriors had basically clinched that game. I think Grant Williams, I'm with you. I mean, that was kind of goon behavior as far as that goes. But it's a situation where I think Draymond's got a much bigger resume when it comes to that than even the Dylan Brooks and the Grant Williams. So I think they all get talked about, but Draymond's the one that's on the Warriors, who are the team that's won 4 championships and been at the top of the NBA landscape now for a long time. And so I think that's why he gets talked about more. Kendrick Perkins is somebody who mixed it up with Draymond from time to time himself. All of that is I think part of the equation here. In addition to the resume, so to speak. 808 KNBR, Coach Mike in Redwood City is next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Coach Mike.
How you guys doing? Thanks for taking my call. Real quick, just on the human nature itself, coming from a person who also didn't respect authority growing up, what it comes down to, I'm sure he's been told by all coaches and all his teammates, you're never going to win an argument with a referee. It's not like they're going to go, oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, take away that call. No. So he just wants to keep arguing and saying words and swearing at him. And eventually, yes, you get a technical and you're going to get 2. So he just has to come to a realization that close your mouth. Don't say anything to these guys ever. I mean, just let them make the call. A call is a call. It's what I teach my high school kids. you're not going to win an argument. Just accept the call, whether you think it's right or not. That's the only way he's going to get over this, is to just shut his mouth and just leave the officials out of it. If they make a call or miss a call, so be it. Move on. You're getting your paycheck. Just move on and don't argue with him, because that's his biggest problem, is he keeps barking at him as he's walking off the court. They hear him. They know what he's saying. And anytime you say anything derogatory to an official or a police officer or anybody in authority, they're going to take offense and you're going to get reprimanded. That's all I really have to say about it. I mean, he's very valuable. We need him. He knows it, but he just has to learn to shut his mouth and not argue with the refs. That's the only way that's going to get rectified. But I wish he could just understand. I wish I could talk to him somehow. I don't know how to get a hold of the coaching staff, but I'm sure they've all told him this, and he can't keep saying the same thing over and over and not get any results out of it.
Yeah, thanks, Coach Mike in Redwood City, 808 KNBR, his line open. He's been talked to about it. I mean, over and over and over, he's been talked to about it. I think what it comes down to is there are times where he just refuses to let it go with the officials, and that's what happened on Wednesday. I mean, Wednesday was a clear case of he didn't like the call. He gets a technical, which is okay. He's got a couple of technicals since his return from the suspension. You can get a technical. And I think, disagree with me if you want, I think Draymond, I think the officials have been pretty restrained in how they've dealt with Draymond since the last incident. I think they've given Draymond a lot more leeway. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, Greg, and I don't know that there's been reporting on this, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of internal meeting of, after the suspension, and it was basically like, he's going to work on it, but we gotta, as a league, you can't be looking to incite him either. And so wouldn't surprise me if there was a dialogue both ways internally between, the league and even the officials that are like, all right, this dude's trying to work through a problem. If he gets, the definition of getting out of pocket, maybe has to move a little bit. So I think everybody has given him a lot of leeway, Greg. And I thought after the first tech, he got a ton of leeway in Orlando, and he just was hell bent on, I'm going to keep going. 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 If I get thrown out, I don't give a rip, basically.
No, I fully agree with you on the leeway thing. I think I fully buy that there was probably dialogue both ways. And it's like, oh, he's going to work on it, but we got to also let him just talk sometimes too. He's gotten leeway more than just a couple of times. And I'm not going to get off on a long tangent, I promise. But I miss Jeff Van Gundy as an announcer, because he would just sometimes call it so clearly, or just like, no problem, just laying it out on the line. And there was one time where Draymond was talking to a ref. I think it was in a playoff game or a primetime game, because it was the Breen, Van Gundy, Mark Jackson announcing crew. And Draymond gets a tech and he keeps talking to the ref, or maybe he'd already had a tech and he's talking to the ref. And Mike Breen goes, well, Draymond Green's got to be careful here. And Van Gundy goes, no, he doesn't. He's like, because now he knows he can do whatever he wants for the next 42 minutes before they might toss him again. So I don't know. I think that was kind of funny, but I agree. He's gotten a lot of leeway. Like, Draymond talking to the refs is not always a terrible thing, but he's gotten a bit of a long leash at times when it comes to just how much he can talk and before he really lets something go.
No doubt. And a lot of times you do get that first tech, and there is going to be, it's like a player who gets a fifth foul sometimes will just be allowed to, well, they're not going to call the sixth one, or you get, 3 fouls in the first half. They're not going to call a fourth one. So you get a little bit, if you handle it right, you get a little bit of extra leeway there. So I just think when it comes to Draymond, it's a situation where, does he have to chill out a little bit? Yes. But again, call me crazy, I think he has since he's come back from the suspension. And I think that the Warriors have benefited from that for the most part. But the one thing we know is it's not ever going to be perfect. And, I know a lot of people mocked what Draymond said on his podcast on Thursday about, having to make sure that you keep it moving and it's, doesn't get worse and all this. And it's like, okay, well, that's the only thing he can say in that particular situation. Like it has to be a scenario where he just keeps it moving and doesn't let it become something that turns into another instance where he ends up getting, run again or does something worse. Like it was perfection in terms of never getting ejected out of another game was never going to be the way this thing was going to play out for Draymond. 808 KNBR, the number, the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line here. Let's get to a couple of text messages from the 209. If the Warriors don't make the play-in, Draymond's going to be gone, I think. 415, and I wanted to get your take on this, Greg. Draymond started going off track in Miami. I was thinking about that. Was there did something happen in Miami?
Yeah, the upper body contact on Patty Mills. I'm going to be honest. I was kind of surprised that didn't get reviewed.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, again, that's a basketball play. I mean, that's a basketball play that may or may not have been excessive. I know there was some chatter about Acosta, the official, that there had been some history maybe between Draymond and Acosta, the official in Orlando there that might have been, at part of that, that there had been a little bit of a history as far as that goes. Let's see. What else do we have? If Dre 707, if Dre woke up and said he didn't want to play, he should retire. It's really selfish if that is his mindset. Yeah, I think the whole thing could be categorized as selfish, no matter what the reasoning is that it gets to that point. Like if he didn't want to play and thought, all right, I'm going to go in a little harder because if I get kicked out, I need the rest. Like I think that's part of the Steph reaction. Not that specifically, but just the dude, we're counting on you. Like we need you, especially tonight with no Kuminga in that game. And that was the no Trace Jackson Davis game as well, right? Or no, that was the Miami game. That was the Miami game. Sorry, they're all running together. No, TJD was back and started in that one. But the Miami game was the game where TJD was out. But guys are, again, the attrition of all these every other day games is I think something the Warriors are having to battle right now. 530, just chiming in generally. Warriors are one of the best road teams in the league, dominating. 21-15 on the road. Dubs have put every squad on notice on the road in the playoffs. Yeah, it's gotten to the point with me, and I'll get back to the Draymond portion of the conversation here because I do want to go back to what I had teased before the top of the hour. I don't think the Warriors fear going to LA, going to Sacramento, going to Phoenix, like whatever they have to do, going to Houston this next week just to hold the Rockets off. Like, I mean, I think they're just more comfortable on the road, more disciplined on the road. I'm almost to the point where it's like, you know what? Just play them all on the road at this point. I mean, I'm not saying stay in a hotel, Greg, but
we could play the cut.
I know that's what Steph said, but I mean, yeah, play the cut. Play the cut.
Oh, now I got to find it. I caught myself off guard.
Oh, I thought you had it. I thought you had the cut. Come on, Greg. Come on.
We might need to stay in a hotel in San Francisco and act like it's a road game, like they do in football. Stay in the hotel the night before. I don't know what it is about the Road Warriors. We've kept our season alive, with our road performance. So it means a lot, and we're gonna have what it's looking like. We're gonna have to do that to get into the playoffs. So something to rely on.
Yeah, they're gonna have to win a bunch of road games to get in. in all likelihood, because the Lakers, although the Warriors did gain ground on the Lakers last night with the Lakers losing in Indiana, the Warriors are probably going to have to win in LA. And then as it stands right now, it's hold off Houston, which may mean you got to win at Houston next Thursday. It's win at the Lakers, 9-10 matchup in an elimination game, knock the Lakers out, and then win as it currently stands, the Warriors would have to win in Sacramento or Phoenix. Those two teams would be playing right now, Phoenix and Sacramento, for the 7 spot in the 7-8 game, and the winner would become 7. Loser would host an elimination game against the winner of the Lakers and the Warriors. So after it's all said and done, it could wind up being the same two teams that the Warriors saw in the playoffs last year that they have to play elimination games against on the road, Sacramento and the Lakers, just to get in. And then once you're in, we've all assumed that it's going to be Denver. We've assumed that it's going to be Denver. It may not be Denver. I mean, right now it's Minnesota, but Minnesota and OKC are tied. Denver is 3rd currently, but a half game back. And I know Denver does want the 1 seed, but Jamal Murray's a little banged up right now. So obviously them protecting him is above everything. But I know if it's not Denver, Warriors got action. They get in. It's not Denver. I mean, they got no action if it is Denver. That's the one thing I will say, as long as Denver's healthy. But I mean, that is the reason to keep fighting. Obviously, if you're the Warriors. 808 KNBR. It's John Dickinson. It's Greg Silver. It's Just Dubs with JD and Silver here on the Sports Leader. I did want to get to this, what I had said as far as Draymond goes, and then we'll pause here after that. And Greg made me think of it because he talked about the 2016 finals and Draymond getting suspended there. I think it goes back even before that in 2016. When Steve Kerr and Draymond got into it in the locker room in February of 2016, when the Warriors were 50-5, it was the Steph Curry, double bang shot with Mike Breen on the call on the ABC Saturday Night Showcase game when they forced the turnover against Durant and Curry hit that shot to win the game in OKC. The night that there was the Lisa Salters, heard Draymond and Kerr going at it, and the reporting on the, authorities having to separate them and come in and all of that. That was the night that I think the Warriors went all in on Draymond until the end. And it was basically, they were rolling at such an extremely high level that, if that incident wasn't going to warrant a suspension, then there was never going to be an incident that was going to warrant a suspension. And I know he has been suspended since. They gave him a game for the Durant thing, and obviously there's been league-imposed suspensions since then. But if he wasn't going to get suspended for that, and then subsequently, the Jordan Poole incident, they made their bed in 2016 because they were so dominant, and he was such a driving force behind their dominance that they were going to allow him to toe the line and cross the line occasionally, as long as they were winning at a high level. And here's the thing. When you allow for that and you do it under the guise of, as long as we're winning at a high level, when you're no longer winning at a high level, doesn't mean you can change the calculus on it. It doesn't mean you can change your tune. And I think that's where the Warriors have found themselves. You can't act one way for the good of everything and then go, you know what? We're mid now. Draymond's going to have to be held accountable. No, actually, he isn't going to be held accountable. And so I think that's where there has been some of this blasé, just kind of is what it is. Draymond has to change. And look, there's been some strong words from the Warriors on Draymond and from everybody, from Lacob, from Dunleavy, from Kerr, from Curry, from everybody. There have been a lot of strong words, but there really haven't been actions. And I think the reason there haven't been actions goes all the way back to 2016. When you have the incident that happened between Draymond and Steve in the locker room at OKC, to me, that's almost a point of no return until the end of time. Basically, when you acknowledge the fact that that's not going to have any kind of consequences. I understand why they did it. I really did. I understood why they didn't suspend him for Jordan Poole. Like that, as much as that was crazy, like I understand that. Consequentially, I think they, suspending him for the Durant incident, while you can say appropriate, that looked like they did it for the wrong reasons. That looked like they did it to placate Durant more than they did it to discipline Draymond, which I think had a negative impact on the whole year, because part of the reason Draymond was so heated with Durant, unfair, right or wrong, was because he didn't think Durant was all in. And then the Warriors acted like, well, we're panic stricken because Durant might leave. We need to discipline you now. We need to choose him over you. And I think that probably low-key pissed Draymond off, which understandably so, I suppose. But let's not get it twisted. The Warriors made their bed with Draymond back in 2016. We are 8 years later now. And, getting kicked out of a late March game in Orlando, as bad as it was, that's not going to be the thing that puts this whole thing over the edge. All right, let's pause here. 808 KNBR, if you want to join the conversation, 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. More calls, more texts, more from the YouTube chat as Just Dubs rolls on with JD, Greg Silver, KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader. Can't wait.
Just Dubs with John Dickinson keeps rolling. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
The right knee soreness,
Yeah.
I believe. A similar thing as to Jonathan, and I guess when did it come up? Is it a long-term concern?
He said he felt it a little bit in the Orlando game, and he thought he was going to be fine. But during warm-ups, pregame, it kind of stiffened up on him. And Rick worked with him on the table before the game, and decided it was not a good idea for him to play.
TBD for Santa.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, so there's Steve Kerr with the latest on Klay Thompson, who was a late scratch. Right knee tendonitis is what the official word was from the team. Jonathan Kuminga's missed the last 2 games with left knee soreness, and the Warriors getting bit a little bit, I think, by the nature of the schedule here, playing every other day with the back-to-backs involved in that as well. They have been now for the last couple of weeks. I think we talked about this on Dubs OT a little bit, the fact that, it's not just the older players that can get hit with the injuries, playing all these games and all these minutes in rapid succession. I think, even somebody like Jonathan Kuminga, who hasn't played a lot of, 30 minutes over and over and over and over and over at the NBA level, throughout the course of his career. I think it does take some getting used to for even Kuminga, as great an athlete and as young as he is at this point. So, Warriors, though, on the road, doesn't matter. On the road, they just keep finding ways to get the job done, and we'll see if they can do it again tomorrow in San Antonio. We should let everybody know we will be on with Dubs OT tomorrow. Here on KNBR, scheduled to be on the radio and on YouTube, Twitch, and the Twitter /X stream right around 6:15, 6:30. And we'll keep that thing rolling probably until at least 7:30, 8 o'clock. I know it's a holiday, and so, we'll have a little bit more of a looser vibe and some room to play with it. And also the Giants, weather permitting for them tomorrow down in San Diego as well. That game could have the potential to be in trouble or maybe get pushed back a little bit, but not today. Not today, according to the Padres. We had that note for those of you that are anticipating Giants baseball. Talking baseball with Marty Lurie coming up at the top of the noon hour, and the Giants and Padres. Padres say they're getting that game in, that they've talked to MLB and the National Weather Service, and they think they're going to have a window to play that game that has a first pitch of 4:15. 808 KNBR, the number to join the conversation here. It is Just Dubs on a Saturday. John Dickinson and Greg Silver. 415-808-5627. That is the number to give us a call or shoot us a text. A lot of Draymond Green conversation, kind of tying that conversation off with a couple of texts. Also, with some of the comments in the YouTube chat as well, and just trying to, a lot of people going back and forth as far as, Sammy K, Warriors should have fined Draymond, that kind of thing. A lot of back and forth about a lot of different things. People, our buddy Andis Brown, loves Greg's shirt. That's a jacket, right? Is that a jacket or a hoodie? What is that? That's like a pullover.
It's a quarter zip. I might as well be a coach in the NBA at this point.
Yeah, quarter zip. Looks like you could be. Looks like you could be the Cal basketball coach. Looks like you could be a Cal basketball coach right now. Looking good. So yeah. Enter the Draymond. Agree with JD's Draymond takes. Appreciate that. Frank Kim, did you guys hear Kerr say he actually wanted to check Dre after the Heat game but didn't, and then regrets it because of what happened against the Magic? Yeah, you got to pick your spots. I mean, you got to pick your spots. And I think, that is something that, knowing the Draymond explosion meter, I think is important for all parties involved, including Steve Kerr. And it doesn't have to be come in and check him, like yell at him, but it could be, hey, how you doing? Make sure you keep your cool. We can't have any nonsense here moving forward. Woodpit 420. That ref is pretty awful. Yeah, and I think there has been a little bit of a history, I think, from what some had told me between him and Ray Acosta. Andis Brown, I think what the Warriors do with Dre will really boil down to if they make it out of the play-in and how well they do in the playoffs. Is the juice worth the squeeze? I think that's a fair way of looking at it, although I still get the impression, Greg, that they're committed to the next 2 years. And I know that was made the commitment before the Donovan Mitchell incident and the Gobert incident and the Nurkic incident and then Wednesday's lower key incident. But I still think when you look, and this is sort of how I wanted to transition into the final 15 minutes or so here of the program, and all of the conversations that the Warriors are going to have. The Warriors are 19-7 in the last 26 games where Steph has started and finished. And I guess the question I wanted to ask you and the question I wanted to ask the listeners and the viewers, how much of what the Warriors have done since January 30th should be considered, or how strongly should it be considered while planning for next year? Because they are 19-7, which is, and again, I'm filtering out, admittedly, the 4 games that Curry, the 3 that he missed in March, and then the 4th one that he didn't play at the end when he got injured against Chicago, and they were 1-3 in those 4. I'm filtering that part out. But they're 19-7 in the 26 games since the end of January, basically with Draymond and Kuminga and Wiggins for the most part starting together. Podziemski was in the starting lineup. Now Clay's back in the starting lineup. Chris Paul's return, mixed in around all of that. And so what I want, that's a 59 win pace. Now, look, they're not I just did it for fun. Like, they're not a 59 win team with that group. But I don't know. The question that I have and what I wonder is, how much should that be considered and how much will the Warriors consider it? Because they got bit last year by doubling down on the veterans because of the way things ended last year, because they won a series, because they were competitive but didn't have enough against the Lakers. They looked at their autopsy of their season last year and thought they needed to get more veteran, that they still had enough from Steph, Clay, and Draymond to be carriers. Now, that part of the conversation, I think, is obviously changed. And the young players' impact, I think, is a different part of the change. But I don't know. How much, Greg, before we get back to the phones, would you put on the finish? Because I could see the Warriors, if they wanted to, making the case, 24-12 without, I'm just picking a number here, 24-12 at the end of the year when they kind of had everybody. And, that's something that with much more of a young player infusion. So it's not the exact same question, but it is similar. It's basically, can you ride with, do you look at the overall, hey, this was a 10 seed? Or do you look at the overall, hey, this team went, let's say, 24-12 down the stretch and was a much different team in the second half than they were in the first?
I put a lot on the end, because if this ends well, and when I say well, I mean like a realistic well standard, I think, now other people might disagree. I think if you get into a playoff series and you have a pretty competitive first round, even if you lose it, I think you can look at the latter half of the season and what happened and be like, hey, this team was kind of competitive. On the other hand, Chris Paul's probably not going to be on the team next year, and this roster composition won't look exactly the same. You got to figure out what to do with Wiggins. Like, how does Wiggins finish the season? That, to me, you can look at how the team finishes the season. How does Wiggins finish the season? Because only the Warriors really know what he's been dealing with off the court, and they got to make their own kind of assessment on that one too. So I think if it ends well, you can put more weight on this nice stretch. If this ends poorly, you kind of look at the stretch and say, okay, like, yeah, you need everything to go right for them to play really good basketball, but you're not going to sustain that over an 82-game stretch.
No, I think Wiggins is key. Wiggins really is. I mean, I think he's playing for his spot on the team next year. He's playing to make the Warriors less apt to want to look to move him next year. So I think he's huge. They're also the financial component. Will Clay take the money they want? I agree with you. Chris Paul is gone, but is Chris Paul gone for another player? Do they bring somebody back with his salary slot? Again, they probably can't do that if they want to get under the tax, which is something they've stated that they want to do. But I just wonder if they feel, regardless of whether they end up in the actual playoffs or not, because that's going to be, can they win a couple of road games in all likelihood over that middle week of April? Do they look at the success if they continue playing well down the stretch here and think that they have something sustainable for next year? I think that's something that's going to be interesting to kind of weigh. More on that coming up. Let's get back to the phones, though, where Mark in Napa chimes in here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Mark.
JD, good afternoon. This is a toxic stress situation. I'm not trying to be a business consultant, but this whole feeling of something's going to go wrong, it's going to happen soon, we know where it's going to go wrong. There's not another player in the league that I can think of over the last 10 years, maybe longer, that compares to this. There have been players who've been suspended, violent, of course, but this sort of resume is, I think, sui generis. I cannot think of another player who's done this. It's just, I felt really bad, legitimately bad for Steph Curry, on the court with those, sort of tears of frustration, it seems like. And I know that's a little bit of a worn out thing, but the pressure that these guys are all under, and Steph's trying to, throw this team on his back, and one of his guys is doing this. And then what's more enraging is he gets on the podcast and it's just replay the ones from the last 5 years. He's the lovable scamp who's got to do better. It's just not changing. They got to move him in the offseason. I don't care if it's for a bag of balls and a carton of towels. This is not happening. I'm not a robot thing from OKC. You mentioned that earlier. That's what always leaps to my mind. There it was, and they ignored it. And, they're paying the piper now. I know that's a lot of words on my part, but am I wrong? I just don't see it getting better.
No, Mark, to me, it's, can you live with the level that it's at? Can you live with the way that it's been for the last 2 months, I think is the question. Gets into it with a ref here or there, maybe gets thrown out of 2 games a year. And I'm talking about for the next 2 years. What you can't live with is anything that's Nurkic or Gobert or Jordan Poole or even Durant with a teammate, anything along that level. And I think he's done for sure. I guess, would you prefer that he didn't get kicked out of another game for 2 years? Of course. But I mean, reality is,
I'll take the under
go
on
ahead.
That. I'll take the under on that.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right, and thanks, Mark. I think that's the question that they have to ask themselves. If there's another major incident, then he's done. Then it's going to be if there's another major incident, then he's probably going to get a 25 game suspension from the league or more at that point, and who knows if the Warriors bring him back at that point. I think that is where he is. He is still, I think, on his last strike, but Wednesday to me is not the final nail. That's not the final called third. It wasn't great, but again, it wasn't the incidents that we've ever, that we've seen otherwise. So, Andis Brown, if you listen to ex-players around the league, a lot of them are done with Dre after the Orlando game. They thought Dre was being so selfish. There's no doubt he's losing a lot of respect around the league. I can't argue with any of that. And I cannot argue with any of that. And I mean, it just, the situation of having it be so early in a game, and so early in a game when the Warriors are shorthanded, and so early in a game when the Warriors need a win, all of that definitely factors factors in.
With the huge cherry on top, JD, being the reaction of the most beloved player. You saw how he reacted visibly on a public stage to the ejection.
Wait, say that again?
I'm saying like the cherry on top of it all is like the most beloved player in Steph Curry having the reaction that he did to the incident.
No doubt. And that is the lasting, because Steph has always, I don't want to say has had Draymond's back, because I think he's known Draymond's been wrong, but he's also said, hey, we still need him, as he did after this incident, by the way, but he's got to be better. And so, again, I think it all gets back to if Steph's opinion of Draymond has changed, then that might lead toward an organizational change. Because I have to believe coming into this season, before the Mitchell, Gobert, Nurkic incidents, coming into this season, if there was a conversation where, and I'm speaking hypothetically here, but if there was a conversation where Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy and Steve Kerr and Steph Curry were all in a room and they were talking about Draymond Green, and let's say one of them is like, we should think about moving on from Draymond, or even two of them, and then the conversation goes to Steph Curry, I think Steph Curry would look at the other three and go, absolutely not. No way we can do it. If that opinion changes, then I think it changes everything. If it has truly changed. Has it? Again, only Steph knows. And what happens between now and I think the end of the regular season plus the play-in, and if the Warriors get into the playoffs, all factors into that. But again, call me crazy. I think it goes back to 2016. I think it goes back to the Warriors enabling him from that point organizationally. One of the nuttiest takes of the week was this whole thing that keeps coming up about Steph needing to hold him accountable. Like when does any person held accountable for another person's actions? I mean, that's just
dude.
asinine.
Like they're all grown men. Come on.
Yeah, that's asinine. But organizationally, I think it goes back to the back and forth in the locker room at OKC in 2016. When the Warriors didn't do anything there, when he was a relatively young player and this team was still on the ascent, that was it. That was to me the end game. No doubt. And so, we'll get into that. 808 KNBR, the number, if you want to chime in here. We do have we got about a minute left. No more calls. Wow. I didn't realize that. I'm glad I looked at the clock, Greg. I was like, holy crap, we got like a minute left in this show. Talk about 2 hours flying by.
Yeah, I'm glad too. I was about 45 seconds away from bad copping you.
No, I knew you were going to have to. And I thought it was like 47. And I looked up and I'm like, oh my God, 52. We got to end this thing. But a great conversation. Thanks to everybody in the YouTube chat. Thanks to everybody on the text line as well. 9 games to go for the Warriors. They've been playing well on the road. We'll see if Klay Thompson comes back, if they can get Kuminga back. But we'll have a lot to talk about. Back tomorrow following the Warriors and the Spurs. Thanks, Douglas Mikes. We will see you guys tomorrow and talk to you on the radio as well. Tomorrow, back on the radio next Saturday, same time, 10 a.m. until noon, as always, on YouTube, Twitch, and the Twitter X stream. Marty Lurie is coming up next with Talking Baseball, as he'll get you closer to the Giants and the Padres. Padres say they're getting that game in, 4:15 first pitch. You will hear all of that coming up right here, KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.